Welcome to my review of Nauticrawl. So in this review I'm going to be talking about the genre itself, and I'll be making some comparison to games like this so that you can get a sense of if this is something that you'll enjoy. I'll also be talking about whether it's worth your time and your money, and finally I will be talking about some of the things that makes this game unique and how to get the most out of Nauticrawl. So before we get into it, just one thing, I won't be posting any major spoilers. I've deliberately kept all of the gameplay footage early gameplay footage because there is some spoilable gameplay mechanics in this game, so I'm going to really try and avoid that in this review. So with that out of the way, let's start talking about whether this is a genre that you will enjoy. So I usually pick games because they are unique and different. I'm often looking for these hidden gems on Steam, and this is no exception. While there are other games that capture elements of Nauticrawl, there's no direct comparison. It's kind of like Objects in Space and Duskers in that you are inside a craft and you use these buttons and switches to interact with the outside world. Also, like Objects in Space, the information that you get is communicated via interfaces and the sounds you can hear. So you're not really looking at the outside world itself, you're basically looking at all of these different displays, and that's communicating to you, that and the sounds outside, basically what's happening. Compared to these games though, I do think that Nauticrawl is a more focused experience, and it does have a specific ending which Objects in Space and Duskers do not have. So let's talk about the price point and whether this game is worth your time. So this game definitely doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a good length and it's possible to get through the entire game in one sitting if you want to do that. There isn't a lot of replay value though. It functions like a roguelike, and most players report finishing the game in about 3 to 6 hours. It's probably closer to the longer end of that scale depending on how much you're looking things up online. But once you have finished the game, there isn't much left to see. I do want to explain this point a bit because it is a roguelike, and each time you play the map is randomized, and that should mean that there's replay value. But the thing is that this game won't throw curveballs at you in the way that Duskers and other roguelikes do. So effectively what that means is that after you've mastered the game mechanics and you've finished the game, having another successful run is going to be fairly straightforward for you. So there are a few players that clock much higher playtime. I do think that's a small minority though, so it's just something to be aware of. It isn't to say that the game's bad or you aren't going to have replay value. It is definitely worth buying, and it is definitely worth your time. Also, the game doesn't sell at a very expensive price point. The only thing is that due to the short length, I would recommend waiting for a sale unless this is something that you're really into. If you're really into these types of games, it is probably worth it at the full price point as well. It's also worth mentioning that the game is really polished. From start to finish, I didn't run into any issues, no bugs to speak of, and I think the game's pretty well designed. So I think what you're getting here is a really good experience. Yes, most players won't get a lot of time out of it, but it will definitely be fun while it lasts. As I said at the beginning of this review, there isn't really anything quite like this game, and it really combines roguelike elements with storytelling and puzzle solving to do something that hasn't been done before. It is challenging in a good way. With every run, you're going to learn something new that will help you survive longer, and that's really what this game is about. Because of that, I'd also say avoid reading guides if you can. Most of what the game has to offer involves figuring out how your craft works and how to interact with the world. You should be dying and you should be restarting in that process, but it's not something that's frustrating. I think reading a walkthrough will probably cut your playtime in half and spoil most of the game, and that's a conservative estimate. I think it might even go much further than that, because about, I would say, 50 to 80% of what's there in this game is figuring out the gameplay mechanics, figuring out how this craft that you're in actually works. Interestingly, it also reminds me of the Outer Wilds, and I know that that's not a fair comparison because the Outer Wilds is a masterpiece, so I don't mean to equate this game to that. I don't think that would be fair. This is a small indie developer, but the systems in the game are well thought out, and it's satisfying to figure out how something works and build your knowledge to go from a world that's very hostile when you start out to one that you can easily navigate as you get towards the end of your playtime with this game. It's just another example of how indie games can be really simple but at the same time be really immersive. And I think this is one of those games where when you play it, you should switch off all of the lights in the room, get a headset on, and just try to immerse yourself in the experience as much as possible. And as I said, only use guides if you really get stuck and you've really tried, and only look up that one thing that you're struggling with, because I think the more that you look up, the more you're going to risk missing out on some of those moments where you figure something out for yourself and it's really satisfying and it kind of takes you to the next phase in the game. I would love to hear from you though. Have you played Nauticrawl? If you have, what did you think of it? And what other games like this have you played in the past? Please do let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you do like this content, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video.